ever imagine living in like a small town? You have the kind where everybody knows everyone else's name.
Yeah.
Like a peaceful coastal town maybe where nobody even locks their doors.
Right.
Then suddenly, bam, a brutal murder just shatters that peace.
Whoa.
And the entire community is left reeling for over a decade.
Oh, that's awful.
That's what happened in Port Hueneme, California,
Okay.
back in 1993
Wow.
with the unsolved murder of Norma Rodriguez.
And that's the story we're diving into today,
Yeah.
unpacking not just the chilling details of the case,
Right.
but also how forensic science evolved to eventually bring justice for Norma and her family.
We got a stack of articles and research here.
Yeah.
What I find fascinating is how this case went cold for so long.
Right.
Then suddenly, boom, DNA technology just cracks it wide open.
It really is amazing.
Almost like a time capsule of forensic science.
Exactly.
The initial investigation back in '93
Yeah.
faced limitations we can barely fathom today.
I mean, imagine relying mainly on fingerprints and blood typing.
Yeah.
DNA analysis was in its infancy back then.
Okay, so set the scene for us.
Sure.
Who is Norma Rodriguez, and what made her murder so shocking to the community?
Well, Norma was a beloved figure in Port Hueneme,
Okay.
a dedicated school secretary,
Uh-huh.
a loving mother and grandmother.
Wow.
Really, someone everyone seemed to know and respect.
This is terrible.
It was her own children who made the horrifying discovery on July 5th, 1993.
Oh, my gosh.
They came home and found her murdered in their house,
Oh, no.
stabbed multiple times.
That's just awful.
The brutality of the attack immediately suggested something deeply personal,
Right.
perhaps fueled by rage.
Yeah, I get chills just thinking about that.
It's a tough one.
With such limited forensic tools back then in '93. No wonder this case went cold.
Yeah.
But what I find striking is how clean the crime scene was. That's unusual, right?
It is no signs of forced entry.
Right.
Very few clues left behind.
Wow.
Investigators at the time.
Yeah.
They surmised that Norma likely knew her attacker, someone who could get into her home without raising suspicion.
So for years, this case haunts the community.
Yeah.
A killer's out there.
Right?
And everyone's wondering, could it be someone they know?
Scary thought.
But then something incredible happens in the early 2000s.
Oh, yeah.
Go on.
That's when DNA technology takes this huge leap forward.
Okay.
PCR, or polymerase chain reaction,
Right.
had become more refined, allowing scientists to analyze even the tiniest samples of DNA with incredible accuracy.
So the Ventura County Sheriff's Office decides to re-examine the evidence.
Uh-huh.
They take another look at a blood sample from the crime scene.
Right.
A sample that was basically useless back in '93.
Right. And this time there's a hit.
Now, hit.
The DNA matches a man named Warren Mackey.
Hold on.
Yeah.
This guy, Warren Mackey, he just pops up out of nowhere.
Yeah, creative.
Who as this guy?
He was an acquaintance of Norma's. They weren't close, but they had crossed paths socially.
Uh-huh.
Mackey had a minor criminal record.
Okay.
Petty offenses, mostly. Nothing that would have screamed future murderer.
Wow.
But that DNA match changed everything.
Yeah.
Imagine he'd been living quietly in the community all these years
Yes.
while carrying this dark secret.
On March 12, 2003, Mackey is arrested.
Wow.
A decade after Norma's murder,
Yeah.
the community is suddenly thrust back into this nightmare.
Right.
But this time with a glimmer of hope for justice.
And Mackey's arrest really shows the power of persistence.
Yeah.
Investigators never gave up on this case. They kept it open,
Right.
re-examined evidence as new technologies emerged,
Right.
and ultimately that dedication paid off.
But of course, Mackey initially denies any involvement.
Of course.
I guess that's standard procedure when you've got DNA evidence staring you in the face.
I guess so.
So what was the prosecution strategy at the trial?
Well, the trial, which began in 2004,
Yeah.
hinged on that irrefutable DNA evidence.
Okay.
The prosecution meticulously laid out the chain of custody, detailing how the blood sample was collected, preserved, and ultimately analyzed.
So they basically said, look, this blood was at the crime scene and it belongs to Warren Mackey, case closed.
Well, not quite.
Okay.
They also argued that the sheer brutality of the attack pointed to a crime of passion or rage.
Right.
Perhaps Mackey harbored some resentment towards Norma, something that escalated into violence.
Okay, but what about the defense?
Sure.
Did they try to poke holes in the DNA evidence?
Absolutely.
How so?
Their main tactic was to suggest potential contamination or errors in the DNA analysis process.
Interesting.
It's a common defense strategy when facing such compelling scientific evidence.
Right.
They basically cast doubt on the reliability of the entire system.
But the prosecution had a trump card, right?
They did.
What was that?
They called in a team of forensic experts who testified to the accuracy and reliability of the DNA analysis. They explained in detail the stringent protocols involved, the statistical probability of a match, and the fact that the blood sample had been carefully preserved, minimizing the risk of contamination.
Yeah.
It was a battle of experts.
Right.
And in this case, the science prevailed.
So after a decade of waiting, Norma's family and the community finally got their day in court.
They did.
But what about Mackey's side of the story? Did he ever admit to the crime?
He maintained his innocence throughout the trial.
Okay.
However, faced with that overwhelming DNA evidence, the jury ultimately delivered a guilty verdict for first-degree murder.
Wow.
Justice, though delayed, was finally served.
And in 2004, Warren Mackey was sentenced to 15 years to life in prison.
That's right.
But a conviction doesn't erase the pain or answer all the questions.
Exactly, and this is where our deep dive takes a turn.
Okay.
We've explored the facts of the case,
Right.
the investigation, the trial, but now we need to shift our focus to the aftermath.
Okay.
The impact this had on the community and what we can learn from it.
Because this wasn't just a case for the courts to decide. This was about a community trying to heal,
Yeah.
trying to understand how something so horrific could happen in their own backyard.
And that's what we'll explore next.
Okay.
How did Port Hueneme, once a symbol of tranquility, cope with this shattering event?
Yeah.
Did the arrest and conviction bring a sense of closure?
Right.
Or did it unearth even more complex questions?
All that and more when we continue our deep dive into the Norma Rodriguez case. You know, it's easy to get caught up in the forensics and the legal drama of a case like this.
Of course.
But I find myself thinking about
Yeah.
what happens to a community like Port Hueneme
Uh-huh.
after something so traumatic.
Right.
Do they just try to move on?
I mean,
Pretend it never happened?
it's quite the opposite, actually.
Really?
The sources we've reviewed suggest that Norma's murder became like this catalyst for positive change in Port Hueneme.
Wow.
They didn't shy away from the darkness.
Right.
They confronted it head on.
So instead of sweeping it under the rug, they turned this tragedy into a force for good.
Precisely.
That's incredible.
Local organizations really stepped up in a big way.
Oh, wow.
There was a surge in support for victims of violence and their families.
That's great.
We even see evidence of new initiatives focused on domestic violence, awareness, and prevention.
So from the ashes of this horrific crime,
Yeah.
a stronger community emerged.
It seems that way.
Wow.
And it's a testament to the resilience of the human spirit.
It really is.
You see, when something like this happens, it forces people to confront these difficult questions about safety, trust, and the very fabric of their community.
I can only imagine the conversations happening in cafes at school board meetings, even just between neighbors.
Absolutely.
This case must have been on everyone's mind for years.
Absolutely. And those conversations, as difficult as they might have been, are crucial for healing.
Right.
They allow people to process their grief, their anger, their fear.
Yeah. And ultimately to find ways to move forward together.
I'm also struck by the fact that the trial and conviction took place over 10 years after Norma's murder.
Right.
That's a long time for a community to live with unanswered questions, with a sense of unease.
And it speaks to the importance of persistence in law enforcement.
Yeah.
But also to the need for ongoing dialogue and support within the community itself.
Yeah.
Because justice delayed doesn't have to mean justice denied.
What about Norma's family?
Yeah.
They were at the heart of this tragedy.
They were?
What was their role in the community's healing process?
From what we can gather, they became powerful advocates.
Okay.
For justice, for remembrance, and for positive change. They turned their unimaginable grief into a force for good.
Wow.
Ensuring that Norma's memory wasn't just about her tragic death, but about the lessons learned and the actions taken to prevent future tragedies.
That's so inspiring.
It makes you realize that even in the face of such darkness, there's always hope.
There is, and it often comes from the most unexpected places.
Yeah.
In this case, from a family devastated by loss, yet determined to find meaning and purpose in their pain.
We've talked a lot about the advances in DNA technology
We have.
that ultimately cracked this case wide open.
Mm-hmm.
But it also raises some ethical questions, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Like,
As forensic science continues to evolve,
Right.
we're faced with new challenges and dilemmas.
okay.
How do we balance the need to solve crimes
Uh-huh.
and bring perpetrators to justice
Right.
with the right to privacy?
That's a good question.
How do we ensure that DNA evidence is used responsibly and ethically?
It's a slippery slope, isn't it?
It is.
On the one hand, we want law enforcement to have the tools they need to solve crimes.
Right.
But on the other hand,
Yeah.
we don't want to live in a society
Right.
where everyone's DNA is on file, potentially subject to misuse or abuse.
It's a complex issue with no easy answers.
Right.
And it's a conversation we need to have as a society.
I do.
Because as technology continues to advance,
Yeah.
these ethical considerations will only become more pressing.
It's a bit of a double-edged sword, isn't it?
It is.
We're grateful for the advancements that helped solve Norma's case,
Right?
but we also have to be mindful of the potential downsides, the unintended consequences.
Exactly. And that's where informed discussion and thoughtful policymaking come into play.
Right.
We need to strike a balance between utilizing these powerful tools for good while also safeguarding individual rights and freedoms.
It's a reminder that progress isn't always a straight line.
It's not.
It often comes with unforeseen challenges that we need to address head on.
And those challenges can be opportunities for growth.
Okay.
For refining our understanding of ethical boundaries.
Right.
And ensuring that technology serves humanity, not the other way around.
Speaking of progress, the Norma Rodriguez case serves as a powerful example of how a community can transform tragedy into a force for positive change.
It does. It highlights the importance of resilience, the power of collective action, and the enduring human spirit that seeks meaning and purpose even in the face of profound loss.
It's a story about justice delayed but not denied.
Right.
About a community finding its way back from the brink of despair.
Yeah.
And about the unwavering dedication of those who never gave up on the search for truth.
And as we delve deeper into the lasting impact of this case, I think it's important to consider the broader implications for other communities facing similar challenges.
Right.
What lessons can we learn from Port Hueneme's experience?
That's a good question.
How can we apply those lessons
to
create safer, more resilient communities everywhere?
Those are questions worth pondering.
They are.
And ones we'll explore further.
Yes.
As we continue our deep dive into the Norma Rodriguez case, we've been unpacking this incredibly complex case.
We have.
And for me, it keeps circling back to this idea of community. What does it truly mean to be a part of a community?
Yeah.
Especially when faced with something as devastating as Norma's murder.
It's a profound question.
Yeah.
And I think this case offers some really insightful answers.
Okay.
Port Hueneme didn't just experience this collective trauma.
Right.
They chose to collectively heal. Their response wasn't about forgetting or moving on, but about actively engaging with the pain and using it as a springboard for positive change.
So it wasn't just about catching the killer.
No.
It was about creating a safer environment.
Exactly.
Preventing something like this from happening again.
Precisely. Think about it.
Yeah.
Increased support for victims of violence, a renewed focus on domestic violence prevention, community dialogues about safety and trust. These are all signs of a community refusing to be defined by tragedy.
And for our listener, it begs the question, what can ye do in our own communities?
Right.
Are we simply bystanders?
Yeah.
Or can we actively contribute to creating a safer, more supportive environment?
That's the heart of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
We can't just assume someone else will take care of it.
Right.
Building a strong community requires participation, engagement, a willingness to speak up, to support those in need, and to advocate for change. It's about understanding that we're all interconnected, that a crime against one person diminishes us all.
It's like that saying, it takes a village.
Right.
We often hear it in the context of raising children, but maybe it applies to building a resilient, safe society as well.
Absolutely. Think about the ripple effects of Norma's case.
Yeah.
The impact on her family, friends, neighbors,
Right.
even those who didn't know her personally.
Mm.
It shook the very foundation of their community.
Right.
But by coming together, acknowledging the pain,
Yeah.
supporting one another,
Right.
and working towards solutions,
Yeah.
they were able to rebuild that foundation stronger than before.
It's a powerful reminder that we're not powerless in the face of such events.
We're not.
We have a voice.
Yeah.
We have a responsibility
We do.
to contribute to the well-being of our communities.
And it starts with simple things.
Okay, like
Being aware of what's happening around us,
Okay.
checking in on our neighbors, supporting local organizations that are working to prevent violence,
Right.
and support victims,
Yeah.
engaging in constructive dialogues about safety and justice.
It's about recognizing that safety isn't just a matter of locking our doors.
Right.
It's about cultivating a culture of empathy, respect, and support.
And it's an ongoing process.
It is.
A commitment to continuous improvement.
Right.
We can always learn from cases like Norma's, identify areas where we can do better, and work together to create communities where everyone feels safe, valued, and protected.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the Norma Rodriguez case, I'm left with a sense of hope.
Me too.
A belief that even in the darkest of times, positive change is possible.
Norma's story is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit,
It is.
the power of community, and the unwavering pursuit of justice.
Absolutely.
It's a reminder that while we can't erase the past, we can learn from it, grow from it, and work together to create a better future.
A future where tragedies like this are less likely to occur.
Right.
Where communities are equipped to prevent violence and support those who've been affected by it.
Yeah.
And where justice, though sometimes delayed, is ultimately served.
Thanks for joining us on this journey.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everyone.
We hope it sparks some reflection, conversation, and perhaps even a renewed sense of responsibility for the well-being of your own community.
Because, as we've seen in the Norma Rodriguez case, it's in those moments of collective action, of shared purpose, that we truly find our strength,
Absolutely.
our resilience, and our capacity for hope.